No, your excellency. Well then, how am I free? A person to whom I can refuse nothing has come to demand you. Come hither. Yes, hither. Really? Then that person is a most amiable person. Albert looked around and perceived Franz. What, said he, is it you, my dear Franz, whose devotion and friendship are thus displayed? No, not I, replied Franz, but our neighbor, the Count of Monte Cristo. Oh, my dear Count, said Albert gaily, arranging his cravat and wristbands. You are really most kind, and I hope you will consider me as under eternal obligations to you. In the first place for the carriage, and in the next for this visit. And he put out his hand to the Count, who shuddered as he gave his own, but who none the less did give it. The bandit gazed on this scene with amazement. He was evidently accustomed to see his prisoners tremble before him, and yet here was one whose gay temperament was not for a moment altered. As for Franz, he was enchanted at the way in which Albert had sustained the national honor in presence of the bandit. My dear Albert, he said, if you will make haste, we shall yet have time to finish the night at Torlonia's. You may conclude your interrupted gallop, so that you will owe no ill will toward Signor Luigi, who has, indeed, throughout this whole affair, acted like a gentleman. You are decidedly right, and we may reach the palazzo by 2 o'clock. Signor Luigi, continued Albert, is there any formality to fulfill before I take leave of your excellency? None, sir, replied the bandit. You are as free as air. Well, then, a happy and merry life to you. Come, gentlemen, come. And Albert, followed by Franz and the Count, descended the staircase, crossed the square chamber, where stood all the bandits, hat in hand. Peppino, said the brigand chief, give me the torch. What are you going to do? Inquired the Count. I will show you the way back myself, said the captain. That is the least honor that I can render to your excellency. And taking the lighted torch from the hands of the herdsman, he preceded his guests, not as a servant who performs an act of civility, but like a king who precedes ambassadors. On reaching the door, he bowed. And now, your excellency, added he, allow me to repeat my apologies, and I hope you will not entertain any resentment at what has occurred. No, my dear Vampa, replied the Count. Besides, you compensate for your mistakes in so gentlemanly a way that one almost feels obliged to you for having committed them. Yeah, I was kind of waiting to see how this played out with Albert, and now it's like, I know this isn't an actual moment that happens in any of the James Bond films, but the kind of unflappable nature, it just feels like Albert crashed through a barn after skydiving and his parachute didn't work and landed in a bale of hay and then just stood up and fixed his, cufflinks and walked out of the barn with a witty bon mot. Just completely unflappable, which can be interesting if that turns out to be the flaw of the character. But I don't know. I mean, but I want to know Dante's true feelings about Albert. But all we get is this moment here, and it's honestly kind of a monumental moment considering how little we get of Dante. But when Albert finds out that it was the Count that actually set him free and not Franz, it says, quote, and he put his hand out to the Count, who shuddered as he gave his own, but who nevertheless did give it. I don't know why I'm picturing Dante wearing gloves, like aristocratic gloves, just so that he can never have skin-to-skin contact with another human being. But that line in there, who shuddered as he gave his own. Why is Dante shuddering at shaking the hand of Albert? He is so fixated on the revenge against Fernand and his former love of Mercedes. You can imagine a number of things going through his mind here. One is, if you want to take a romantic point of view of it, and kind of like cringy romance, but the fact that his love has been taken away. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, that Albert represents possibly the son that he never had with Mercedes, that his life was taken away from him, and therefore her offspring with Fernand is part of the life that has been stripped from him. And so he's shaking hands with like an alternate reality, or that he's shaking hands and touching skin to skin, his first indirect touch of Mercedes since he was imprisoned all those years ago. This is the flesh of my betrothed. Or, simultaneously, to make it even more complex, this is also the flesh of one of my greatest enemies. Revenge has pumped through my veins for most of my life at this point, and it is now coming in contact with the closest to my target I've ever been. So you can imagine if that's going through Dante's head here, or something like it. I don't want to put my interpretation in your mind, but if something so intense is making Dante shudder as he shakes the hand of Albert, you can imagine how audacious Dante would find it for Albert to be nonplussed by all of this, and then have the audacity to suggest, well, hey, it's early enough that I can still make it to the ball. I mean, I guess it's Franz that says that, but even still, Albert is totally game for it. And in fact, instead of, I think it was a line earlier in this passage, the bandit, i.e. Vampa, gazed on the scene with amazement. He was evidently accustomed to see his prisoners tremble before him, and yet here was one whose gay and temperament was not for a moment altered. So when he says, Albert, responds to him after saying he's free, Albert says, "Is there any formality to fulfill before I take leave of your excellency?" I mean, this is just a roller coaster, like a literal ride for him. This is an attraction. He has been selected to be, in the gallows at the Renaissance Fair. Is that a thing? I feel like that's a thing. I could be way off on that. Isn't there someone gets volunteered to be taken away as prisoner for a little while, or is that a real thing? Do they have a real jail at the Renaissance Festival? I don't know. I realized the metaphor fell apart as I was saying it. But you get what I mean, though. He's not taking this seriously at all. It is a brief interruption to his aristocratic adventure in Italy. Okay, today is the penultimate episode, so you know what that means. That means I am going to thank you all for being here and listening every single day. Earlier this chapter, a couple times, I'd asked you about the YouTube, and I've already heard back that it is an essential resource for a lot of you. So I will continue to do the YouTube channel for this show. Odyssey, however, I have put a small hiatus on. I don't know if you listened to both shows and if you listen to both of them on YouTube or not. That one, the release strategy will be a little bit different. I will put out all of the episodes on YouTube at the end of each chapter, but of course, you can listen to that as a traditional podcast in any podcatcher of your choosing. And I've also decided, now that we have concluded Supporter Month, that I'm going to be handling these outros a little bit differently. I'm going to ask you to stay after the credits to check out what is available on Patreon. I'm going to do some dynamic ad insertions from now on instead of baking them into the episode. That way, when you're listening to this in the future and not as they're coming out, you will still get the most up-to-date information on what is happening over at patreon.com/gruntworkpod. So now I can take the time in these final episodes, always, of the chapters, to just really bask in thanking you for being here day after day. I started this chapter saying I was a little hesitant to get back into recording, not dreading it, but over the course of this chapter and hearing from a bunch of you, I'm back in it. Any nervousness I had is gone, and I'm ready to jump right into Chapter 38 as soon as we conclude Chapter 37 tomorrow. And that's because of you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out, sharing your thoughts with me, and I hope you continue to do so. Stay tuned after the credits to hear what you get on Patreon. And until tomorrow, when we conclude Chapter 37, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.